Welcome to episode 17 of the EnglishAnyone.com Power Learning Podcast. I'm Drew Badger, the co-founder of EnglishAnyone.com, and it is a pleasure to be joining you again today. It should be a very, very interesting podcast episode. It's been an interesting day for me, actually, just trying to record this. This is the third location I've been using to try to record this episode because there's construction happening everywhere. So even if you can find a different place to record out here in my little town in Japan, there's lots of cars and little kids and dogs and all kinds of things. It's almost like it's like a recording minefield. So no matter where you go, you're going to get some extra sounds, and the quality of the audio might not be as nice as it normally is. So I apologize for that, but you're in for some really great content today, and it should be a really fantastic episode for you. So I'll give you a lot to learn today and a lot that you can take from this episode and begin using in your life, not only to improve your English, but to improve other things and to find more success at anything that you want to do. So let's get into it. In this episode, I want to talk about doing the right things in the right way. Now, this is so important no matter what you want to do, but specifically for things that take a long time. So something like learning English, it's not something that you can do in one day. So it requires more time and more effort and more planning at the beginning so you can really figure out the best way to learn first, and then you can start learning new things. One really cool example, my aunt, one of my aunts back in Chicago, she used to work for a project management group, and they actually they showed me a recording one time of a house that was built in a few hours. Now, usually a house takes a long time to build, but basically what they had shown is that if you take a whole bunch of time and plan it out before you actually pour any concrete or put any glass windows or framing or anything else that's needed to build a house, you can plan for something, and if you do it the right way, then when you finally do that thing, you can do it much, much faster that way. So obviously, taking the time to build one house, all of that planning, maybe it's probably about the same amount of time, but if you use that same planning to make 50 different houses, that's where you've got a really great system there, and that's what I want to help you do today. So even if you're not a business or a large company or anything like that, you can always look for better systems to help you do the things you want to do. So figuring out first, designing the system you want, and then you can take that and do many different things with it. So today we'll be talking about doing the right things in the right way and also in the right order. So there's lots of things. It applies to not just fluency, but also, pretty much anything you'd like to do that takes a lot of time. So any long-term skill or knowledge that you'd like to have, it takes a while to acquire that, and it's best to plan at the beginning and figure out the best ways to learn and the best ways to acquire knowledge and skills, that kind of thing. So what I want to begin with for this episode is asking the right questions. This is really important because when you ask the right questions, and by right questions, I mean questions that specifically give you targeted answers. And instead of asking something like, how do I get fluent, which is a very general, vague kind of question that I do get asked a lot, there's lots of pieces inside fluency. And so maybe some of that is pronunciation, and some of it is grammar and vocabulary and words and idioms, other things like that. But if you ask a general question, you're going to get a general answer, and it won't be very helpful for you. So the first thing you're going to do whenever you're trying to do, like I said before, specifically long-term goals, but really anything, is you want to be asking the right kind of questions first. And asking those questions, like instead of how do I get fluent, it's more how do I master vocabulary quickly? How do I improve even just this one sound? How do I roll my R? Or how do I make the L sound or the T sound or other things like that? And as soon as you begin asking more specific questions, these are better questions that give you more specific answers. So in today's episode of the podcast, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why it's so important, and we're going to use a few analogies, a few stories that are really, really important for this. So we'll begin by talking about doing the right thing in the right way and in the right order with a story about the Wright brothers. Now, if you're not familiar, this is in 1903, so maybe just a little over 100 years ago. This was the first flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. So the first airplane that was really learning, able to get off the ground. But what most people don't know, and this is true for many different situations, not just for flying, is that there were other people that were also working on airplanes at the same time as the Wright brothers. But the Wright brothers were the ones that were able to achieve flight first, and so they got the credit for it, and they're the ones whose name gets remembered in history, in the history books. But another man by the name of Samuel Pierpont Langley, Samuel Pierpont Langley, he was also working at designing an airplane and building something that was competing with them at the same time. So he was using, he had more money for his project. He even had the backing of the Smithsonian. But basically, you've got kind of the underdogs here, like the two, the term underdog basically means the people you think probably won't win, and this is how movies are usually designed. You have like the underdog hero, like a movie like Die Hard, against a whole bunch of terrorists or something like that, people that are trying to take over the building. So Bruce Willis in the movie Die Hard was the underdog. He was the guy you root for because maybe he's probably not going to win, but you really want him to. So the Wright brothers, this is a classic story, that happened in real life in the same way. So the Wright brothers, maybe they, didn't have so much money and they're kind of going up against this other guy, but they had two different design philosophies. And this is really important. So what Samuel Pierpont Langley did was focus on the engine first. He really wanted to spend a lot of time designing an engine for a lot of power that would be able to pull an aircraft up into the air and then through the air. But what the Wright brothers did was they didn't worry about really the engine at all. They wanted to make something light that would actually be able to fly. So what they were really working on was a glider. Now, basically, you have two different design philosophies, and maybe they're both good, but, as history shows, the glider was the one that worked and was the one that created flight or made flight possible first. So what's really interesting about this story is that in these two different ways of looking at the problem of flight, really they had kind of two different questions. So Samuel Pierpont Langley is asking the question of, how can I make an engine that's powerful enough to take a plane through the sky? And he was thinking about the kind of the force and maybe producing something powerful, while the Wright brothers were asking the question of, how is flight really possible? Even, just making something that's light and able to get up and glide through the air, how can we make something like that? And then after that, once we get a nice design for something that can carry a person that can actually fly around, then we'll worry about the engine that we attach to that. Now, if you think about the way the Wright brothers did that, it makes perfect sense. You would, instead of trying to design an engine first, you would create the body. That's the kind of right thing to do and in the right order. Because once you build that, then you can think about how you're going to have the engine attached to that. And they really didn't need much of an engine at all to attach to that. They just needed something to push the airplane along, because they already achieved gliding, the ability to just kind of glide through the air with the design itself. Now, what's so interesting about this story, not only for English learners, but for anyone trying to do anything, is that the Wright brothers were really focusing on answering that right question of, how can we just get something to fly? We don't need to worry about the propulsion. That's, again, it's a larger kind of idea where you're worrying about how to make something fly through the air, but also how to push it through the air. So they were just asking that one specific question. And once they have that glider design, then they can put all kinds of different engines on there and give it lots more power and do many more things with it. So because they focused on things in the right order, they did the right things in the right way, in the right order, they were able to succeed. Now, you'll see this a lot in business. Just kind of like look at the two different ways of thinking here. One is like the glider way of thinking, and one is the engine way of thinking. And people that have an engine way of thinking, when they talk about designing the engine for something first, what they're really doing is talking about all of the things that come after the real foundation of what it is you're working on. So we'll take business as an example. This is, something that, I fell into the trap of, and many people do when I hear people talking about starting businesses. What a lot of people do is they begin with all of the engine pieces instead of really answering the question of what's required to get a business running. So the way of engine, kind of the engine thinking we could call it, is thinking up a cool business name or getting your business cards or your website that really just aren't as essential as the real base foundation. And the kind of glider way of thinking, the opposite way of thinking, is what's really essential to have for a business. And the thing that's essential, the thing that every business needs, is a paying customer. That's just kind of the definition of a business. So not every business needs a business card. Not every business needs a website even. But what every business does need is a paying customer. So if you can focus on, okay, how can we get that thing? That's the real question, the real foundation of the business. And then once we get that, okay, now we understand how to get a paying customer. When you understand how to get just one paying customer, that's the glider. That's the thing that's really important to focus on. And then once you have that, then that's what's going to be able to take you into a whole bunch of different, crazy new ideas, because you can build the engine of the other things around that. So after you have the right way to sell people and you understand the message and the marketing, that kind of thing, the foundation of a business, that's when you can start adding the business cards and the website and all of those other things. So if you're, it doesn't matter if you're building a business or trying to get fluent, whatever it is, when you do things in the wrong order, it can be really confusing because you feel like you don't know what's wrong. So I know that happened to me when I was starting a business, a couple of years ago when I was first starting to think about business and learning about business ideas. And it's the same thing, now that I think about it, that happened when I was learning Japanese or Spanish or French, and I was kind of learning them the wrong way. So I began in this kind of wrong way. The first example is with business. So I would be, thinking about a cool name or, business cards or designing a website, all these other things. But that was before I even had like a paying customer at all. And when I think about it now, it seems so funny, but it's really the way most people do it. And the learning English or learning a different language example, instead of, like business where you're trying to have a cool website or do that, like you think about buying programs or, learning words and phrases and all these other things. But if you don't understand how to learn first, then you're really just wasting your time. So let's say you could pay like a few $1,000s for an English program. You could even travel to America or some other English-speaking country and spend a whole bunch of money trying to learn all these other things, which are really kind of the engine. But what you should be focusing on is the glider. And the glider is actually how to learn. So that's what I want to talk about. That's what I really want you to remember about this podcast episode. It's incredibly important for you to focus on doing the right things in the right way, in the right order. So again, the right order, we begin by how do we learn, and then thinking specifically about what, let's say we're thinking about how to remember words or how to pronounce certain things in a certain way. These are very specific questions that we ask. And once we understand all of these things, that's when you really begin to have a system, a true system of learning that enables you to go out and learn and get all the input and all of the other things that make kind of the engine part of the learning. So you don't begin by putting the engine in there. You begin by producing a glider. And that glider is a way of thinking. That glider is a way of behaving and a way of learning words and language and understanding how memory works. All of these things put together. And even though it may not seem like you're making a lot of progress at the beginning, as I like to say, it's better to measure 9 times and cut once than it is to measure 1 time and then have to cut 9 times after that. So this just means it's better to plan in the beginning so that after you've been doing something for a while, you've really planned it out. That way, when you finally begin taking action, it becomes really easy to do that. Now, as I was learning Japanese and these ideas started to occur to me when I was, I tell this story a lot that I was at a park and saw some Japanese children speaking with their mothers, and it occurred to me, wow, like they're really doing everything the opposite way that, I've been taught as a teacher and how I've learned for, becoming a language student. So it really occurred to me like, wow, I was actually doing things in the wrong way. I was learning the wrong thing, but I was also learning it in the wrong way. So instead of first understanding how to learn and then really developing a great system to help me learn, what I was doing was trying to get a whole bunch of input, a whole bunch of new words and phrases and idioms and ideas and things like that, because those are the kind of fun things that people want to learn. I wanted to learn a whole bunch of new words, but the problem was that because I hadn't understood how to learn, I was getting all of this information, but I wasn't retaining any of it. So if that problem has ever happened to you, you try to learn new words and you can't remember anything you're studying, the reason is because you're not studying that information in the right way. So we can learn, you could have one person that learns a new word and then another person that tries to learn that new word but can't. And the reason that is because one of them understands how to learn and they're learning something in the right way and the other person is not. So that's what I really want to impress upon you in this episode. It's really important to think about not only learning the right information in the right way, but also in the right order. So if you're struggling and you feel that you're not able to remember things or your pronunciation is not coming along, it means you have to take a step back and start learning things in the right way, in the right order. So, of course, you want to be studying the right things, which is, the kind of conversational English that you want to be speaking, especially if you're a student of mine. Obviously you're learning some things for business, but the things that you'll find in a textbook are not the things that are spoken on the streets. An American English speaker would understand those things that are in a textbook, but that's just not how we speak normally. So if you want to be a really great speaker, you have to begin with the right content. So this is part one of that. The right content is actually learning conversational English. The second part of that is learning the right content in the right way. Now, I'll kind of go into language learning a little bit more in depth right now, but I won't go into too much detail about it because there isn't so much time and I don't want to give you too much information. But the right way to learn something is, and I've talked about this many, many times, but basically what you're doing is if you take the right information, you have to break it down into pieces and learn those in steps. So if you try to take, like, let's say I'm going to sit down and my Japanese is not very good and I sit and watch a Japanese movie. Now, there are so many cultural references and idioms and phrases and maybe weird grammatical structures that I don't know. And it's not even that the language is so advanced, it's just almost like a foreign language from Japanese. So the Japanese that I hear in a textbook or from like a listening practice CD is just not the same thing as the Japanese I hear when I'm speaking with people normally or watching a movie. But usually normal conversation is kind of like that's the ultimate thing you should be studying, because even the English or the Japanese in my case from a TV show or a movie, it's a script. And so people aren't speaking exactly naturally. They have lines that they've been practicing. So it's kind of the second level, a level down from the native conversational English that you should be learning if you want to understand all of that. So if you can focus on understanding conversational English, then all of the other English becomes really easy. But if you start at the bottom and start learning textbook English, then it's much more difficult to try to work up through the levels. So again, that's what I mean about studying the right thing, which is that conversational English in the right way. And that right way becomes, how do we take this English and break it down into pieces and make it much easier to study, because it's just too much information coming to you at the same time if you try to watch it and you're not prepared. So if you are the kind of person that likes watching American movies, but you have to have the subtitles or you even have to have your own language come on, then you can enjoy that movie, but it's going to be very difficult for you to learn with that. And that's why a lot of people get frustrated. Again, they're trying to learn the right thing, but they're not learning it in the right way. And then you've got that order. You have to, begin learning the way to learn first. And that's why, when I, at EnglishAnyone.com, one of the things that I'm such a kind of strong believer in is figuring out the best way to do things first, so that way when you actually begin studying the content, it becomes really easy for you. It's the same thing in language learning or business or sports or anything else. You master the fundamentals of how to do something. And that's why I talk so much in these podcasts about your psychology, how you think, and then the actual way that you learn. After that, all of the idioms and the phrases and the culture, it's very, very quick and easy to learn. But you have to master the basics. You have to do the right things in the right way, in the right order. So to help people do that, you can actually begin doing that right now. Try to find something at a level that you're comfortable with. It could be something you enjoy reading, or it could be something you enjoy watching. Actually, I prefer one of my favorite Japanese TV shows to watch to help me improve my Japanese is Sazae-san. And that is just it's kind of like the Japanese version of The Simpsons, but it's a little bit, it's very kind of expressing the culture of Japan, so you can learn a lot about things, but it's also for family, and it's quite easy for people to understand the Japanese in it. So I get to learn lots about the culture and learn how kind of family life is in Japan from this TV show. So it's just a cartoon, and I enjoy watching it. You can probably find it on YouTube, I imagine. If you want to practice. But whatever that content is, you begin by, especially if you can get a video of something, not just something on TV, because you want something that you can pause it and go back and review and rewind, that kind of thing. So let's say you find it could be a book, or it could be anything like that, like a TV show or just a movie. But find something and you want to break it down into pieces. So you should be studying particular scenes, going back and looking up all of the vocabulary that you don't know. It's quite a lengthy process, I must admit. But if you do that, if you actually take the time to go back and do something like that, you're really going to master that information. Now, what you can do if you have the time, you can go through and actually do that. Find a TV show. Probably a TV show is better because it's shorter, and you break it down into maybe 3 10-minute pieces, or a few 5-minute sections, and then watch those over and over again. Watch it without the being able to look at the TV show, where you just listen to the sound and train your ears, and then you can watch it repeatedly, and then go through, write down the words that you don't know. Especially if there's a transcript to that, you can read that as well and practice with that. But really master that one episode, and it will really help you get deeper into the English that you want to learn, and you'll learn a whole bunch of new things each time you review that new information. Even the same way now, I go back and watch movies from my childhood, and I notice new things that I didn't notice before, because I just, I hadn't learned those pieces of the culture yet. So if you really want to do the right thing in the right way, in the right order, you have to be, again, learning that native content, but then you have to take it and break it down into pieces. Now, I call this the Fluency Bridge, and I'm trying to teach you right now exactly how you can do it. It's a little bit more difficult for you to do it without a teacher, but if you have a private tutor or someone that you can work with, you can talk with them and get them to produce for you maybe a couple of words from a TV show or something that you can practice and listen for. Or if you're, somebody that wants to save a lot of time and wants to learn a lot of things quickly, I've designed the whole Fluency Bridge system right into Master English Conversation. So that's my fluency program, and we've got members all over the world that are learning with that system right now. And again, what I've done is it's this exact same system that I used to get fluent in Japanese. So how I take the language and, because I'm teaching my own language, it's much easier for me to break down the words and the vocabulary and the grammar and all of those things, and then teach that. So that way, you as the student can just sit back and relax and enjoy the content without actually having to do all of the studying and all of the figuring things out, because it's already basically done for you. So if you're the kind of person that likes to save time and you really want to have a much faster way of learning, then I highly recommend you try Master English Conversation. So you've basically got 2 options for the Fluency Bridge. You can join Master English Conversation, or you can just use use the same Fluency Bridge formula for yourself. You take the native English content, whatever that is, a TV show or a conversation you record. If you're, familiar with any kind of native speakers, any, then maybe you can ask to video record them, and then you can take that and then, review that, get it transcribed. There's lots of things you can do if you want to take the effort to do that. Or if you want to save time, you can just join Master English Conversation, and all of that is already taken care of for you. So you've got the right content, and it's broken down into pieces that you learn individually. So again, just like the Wright brothers, focus on the right things in the right way, in the right order, whatever that is, and be sure to ask the right questions. Make sure your questions about what it is you want are very specific. Don't say, I want to get fluent in English. Say, I want to improve this specific thing. I want to learn this pronunciation. I really want to master this vocabulary, or I want to learn these idioms or something like that. So whether you join Master English Conversation or you decide to study by yourself or have a teacher help you, all of those things are fantastic. It just depends on what your personal goals are and how much time you'd like to spend, that kind of thing. So if you want to do it by yourself, really think about the Fluency Bridge. Really think about doing the right thing in the right way. Try to think about things the way the Wright brothers would think about it. Build the glider first. Think about the best way to answer the question of how you fly, and then you can put the engine on that. In your case, as an English learner, that engine would be all of the great, the movie quotes and the idioms and the phrases and the expressions, other things like that. So don't learn all of those things before you understand how to learn. Well, that's it for this episode of the Power Learning Podcast. You can also download this episode at EnglishAnyone.com, and I will see you again in the next episode very soon. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.